You are listening to Proof of Love with Tatiana Moroz, Dr. Stephanie Murphy, and Lauren Kasovitz. This show may contain adult content, language, and humor and is intended for mature audiences. If that's not you, please stop listening. Nothing you hear on Proof of Love is intended as financial advice, legal advice, therapy, or really anything other than entertainment. Please take everything that you hear with a grain of salt. Oh, and if you're hearing us on an affiliate network, the ideas and views expressed on this show are not necessarily those of the network that you're listening on, or of any of the sponsors or affiliate products that you may hear about on the show. Now that that's squared away, let's start the show. Show me your heart. I know that it's beating. Tell me that you love me too. So I know your heart is true. 'Cause I need some proof of love. 'Cause I need some proof of love. 'Cause I need some proof of love. Thank you to our sponsor, MetalPay, where you can send money anywhere easily and for free while earning crypto. Use the code Tatiana Show to earn even more. MetalPay.com. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Proof of Love. I'm so excited for this episode. We have a special guest, Juliet's going to be joining us, in addition to our usual cast of characters here at Proof of Love. If this is your first time listening, you might be wondering, what the heck is this stuff? Who are these people? Basically, Proof of Love is an attempt to bridge the gap between peer-to-peer and bring a little love into our hearts. And, it's sort of focused on the crypto community, but it's definitely something that can be for lots of different people because everybody wants love. I'm Tatiana Moroz, and I'm a singer-songwriter. I have a company, Crypto Media Hub, and I have the Tatiana Show podcast. I've been heavily involved in crypto since 2012, also a pretty staunch libertarian. Not that we have to talk about politics on this show, but some of my fans might be, so holler at Ron Paul, everybody. And I'm the resident single gal, sort of Carrie Bradshaw, if you will. And so girls, please introduce yourselves.
Hey, I'm Dr. Stephanie Murphy, and I've been talking about relationships on the internet since 2008. That's my tagline. I'm done. Sorry, Lauren, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Lauren Kasovitz. I am a new transplant to California and recently engaged. I am a writer and have been blogging since 2006.
Hi, I'm Julia. I'm better known as Brave the World. I started out with some more political activities, and then as of recently, probably due to the fact that I became a mother, I became more interested in relationship dynamics, family, and parenting. So I try to fuse all of my past, which includes Bitcoin and politics, into my new philosophy of relationships.
Awesome. And also, just guys, if you want to listen to Stephanie, she's so humble. She also has a really great podcast called Sex and Science Hour. And you may have heard her on Let's Talk Bitcoin. She's been doing that for a long time. So I think we've got a really exciting group of ladies, and we have so many things that we can get into. But what we were thinking about would be a good one to hit up would be the Tinder apocalypse and modern dating.
What is the Tinder apocalypse, in your words, Tatiana?
It means that people are not really connecting and they've become sort of disposable. We've got these dating apps. I love it because you can do it in your pajamas, but there's not a lot of real connection there. Sometimes people use it just for hooking up. I think there's been some studies that in areas where Tinder is really big, the prostitution levels have gone down. I guess guys don't really need to pay for it because there's Tinder. And I think that it kind of makes it so people become disposable, right? I mean, it's fun and you can shop by a certain characteristic, like you can say, oh, I want this, this, and this, and that's kind of neat. But I think as we see it ripple through society, not so sure that it's a good thing.
So I'm hearing like it's easier than ever to conveniently meet people just by swiping. But within that process, you start to feel less special, like there's less actual, real, authentic connection.
You start to feel swipeable.
Yeah, disposable, really. Because if someone swipes you away, then that's it. There's thousands of other people waiting in line behind you, right?
So I did a little Tinder experiment. I was in a relationship at the time, so I felt safe in doing so. And what I wanted to see was, I wanted to do two profiles. One profile was just the pictures were just my face, and I'm smiling, and I just look like a normal girl next door. And then the next profile would have been a lot more indicating more promiscuity with the images. So maybe like my cleavage is out, or I'm posing in a typical vixen-esque way. So I wanted to see if men would talk to me differently. And everything I said to the men and my actual profile in terms of the text would have been the same. So I didn't get to the promiscuous looking one. I quit maybe 4 hours into the girl next door profile because it didn't seem to matter. 90% of the men would message hello and then immediately jump to incredibly graphic and explicit fantasy-driven dialogue.
Nobody ever writes me this. I want to get some, I want some dick pics. I feel a little bit left out.
Ooh, be careful of saying that.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I definitely don't want that, guys. But
you want, what I hear is that you want something, right? Like something
well,
to
no, I just think it sounds really funny to hear people bust directly into something like that. I guess it just doesn't happen to me. I don't know why. But I don't know. People don't
just
jump
give off like a easy vibe, no matter what my pictures look like.
No, because a lot of women talk about this, and I'm curious. So, Julia, you never even talked as the more promiscuous looking one at all. You didn't even.
No, I didn't even get to that stage because I was so grossed out. It was just everyone. It was so explicit and so ridiculous. And one thing I noticed is, no matter what I said, the males would very much try to come over to my house instead of me going there. So that's definitely an indicator to me. It's just so they could leave immediately and not have to get me out of their place. And I even said something like, you sure you want to invite a stranger into your home literally 10 seconds after you've spoken to me online? They're like, I can handle you. I'm like, all right, I'm done. I can't.
What if it's a catfish though? It might not be your pictures, right?
No, exactly. But they're saying it to every single girl, right? That they're able to speak to, and they see who wants to, and they do it, and then they leave.
Are you swiping? How are you swiping to allow them? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, no, I had a very similar experience to Julia. As Tatiana knows, I totally despise app dating. I always have, but I tried it a few times over the years. While I was dating in New York, I was meeting a lot of people in social situations, working in real estate. It wasn't that I wasn't meeting guys, but I was just kind of curious, and everyone kept telling me to do it. And I didn't have any promiscuous photos either. I'm pretty girl next door looking, so I don't think I was giving off any kind of, overly sexy vibe. And I was getting such an onslaught, especially on Tinder. On some of the other apps, it was a little bit different. I actually met a few nice guys, but it was so quick. It was like the moment you respond back to them, dick pic or a sexual scenario or something. It was just so like, God, it was really, really demeaning. I really didn't like it. And like Julia, I actually was single at the time, and I think I lasted on Tinder for about a month and then never went back. I was like,
I want to relate a story, pre-Tinder story. When I was 14, and it's some knowledge that my father gave me, which translates very well here. I was 13. We were in Europe. We were walking around. We were right on the border of France and Germany. And my mom went to take my little sister to the bathroom, and my dad was parking the car. So they left me for 10 minutes in a big open square right in front of a church. Very touristy. And I'm standing there. I don't have any makeup on. I have my dad's giant coat on me because I forgot mine. And I'm just looking at the church. And these three dudes come over to me. They try to pick me up in English. I ignore them. They try to pick me up in French. I ignore them. They try to pick me up in German. I ignore them. They try to pick me up in Russian. This elicited a response from me just because I was surprised. And as soon as I gave them a response, they came on even harder. My father shows up, and I walk over to him and take my father's hand and walk away. And these dudes follow me for 40 minutes, even though I'm holding my dad's hand and walking away. And I told my dad what had happened. And he said, well, Julia, it might seem weird to you that they would try this way, but keep in mind, they try to do this to every single girl they see. And eventually somebody is receptive. It's a numbers game. So 1 out of 1,000, they'll pick up, and who knows what happens. And this is what Tinder
How
is.
old were they?
Wow.
They were 25 at least.
Ooh. Oh.
That's
Yeah, I'm
gross.
sorry to hear you had that experience. That's really creepy, aggressive, violating. But I think a lot of women can relate to this.
Yeah, but I think it's transferred over to Tinder. And the problem with Tinder is the very fact of you being on there kind of assumes consent from the men. So they feel even less guarded about saying gross things to you immediately.
I agree with that. And I've noticed with certain apps, it is like that. I mean, granted, I only, did it for a month, but the other apps that I tried out for a week here and there that were a little bit more relationship based, for me personally, tended to have less of that sexually explicit content. It was still there. It just seemed with Tinder or with other sites that are a little bit more casual, that it just, like Julia said, if you're on there, there's the assumption that you're looking for something and maybe it's not what you're actually looking for.
Okay, and Lauren, which apps were better in your experience?
Well, this was years and years and years ago, and I think it's now a paid service, but I went on Hinge and I actually met somebody. I was with him for a bit, and he's actually one of my best friends now. Tatiana knows him, but a great guy and a good friend. And it was a lot more relationship based. I found that there were guys that were actually more interested in getting to know me. There were still the usual creeps. I mean, on any of these sites and in the real world, you're always going to come across people that are looking for what they're looking for. But I know that there's also like faith-based apps that people have better luck with, Christian Mingle and JDate and things like that. And I think maybe when you're breaking it down into more specific things, or I know a lot of people have had luck with Match. I had terrible experiences on Match. I had a lot of angry men who were mad I wouldn't respond to them, mad I didn't want to get together. It was, for me, it harkened a lot back to my early days of blogging when there was just a lot of anger on the internet if you weren't giving somebody the attention that they felt they deserved. That was the real issue that I had, even more than the sexually explicit content or the assumption of sex. It was more of that anger, like, who do you think you are that you're not responding? You're not better than me, da 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 da. And it was pretty emotionally devastating to me. That's why I stopped using all of these apps. It just felt really like a constant attack. I don't know if anybody else has.
Sounds like a sense of entitlement. Is that right?
Yeah, where do they get that? Why would they even feel that way? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What year is this?
For me, that Match experience, I was on it for maybe 2 weeks, and this was probably back in 2013, I'd say. It was back then.
It's funny. I think that is a new thing because I actually I like to consider myself one of the first people to date on the internet out of anyone I know. And when I was dating online, I got pretty lucky. So I didn't date online long enough. So maybe that's why my experiences were pretty positive back then. But everyone thought it was very dangerous and scary. But I met two really cool guys. One of them I met on Craigslist. I wasn't looking for a guy, but I saw this post. I was actually going through the personals and kind of laughing at the posts with my friend. And then I saw one and I thought, oh, this is actually really well written. Maybe I'll respond. And I did. And we dated for 3.5 years. And then another one was Lava Life, like right when Lava Life was a thing.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I just wanted to say of course there's positive experiences. Then I think the anger thing is definitely kind of more recent.
I agree with you on that because I do have a lot of friends who've had really, really great experiences online dating, who've gotten married, who've been in serious relationships. And I have had a few good ones too. But I also think it tends to be somewhat of an age thing as well. I know my mom has had friends who are divorced or widowed and went on kind of the more old school sites that older people tend to go to, and the eHarmonies, the old school Plenty of Fish, that kind of thing. And they've had better luck. And I don't know if that's age. I'm not really sure what that comes down to, but I always thought that was really interesting also.
I think a lot of it comes down to your attitude and your expectations, right? Because I don't want to blame the victim here, but I just know certain people like in this older age bracket, like kind of my parents' age or their generation, who have these negative experiences with online dating. And then they kind of talk about it to their friends. And then their friends are expecting that this is what they'll find when they go on online dating. And as a result, they're approaching dating with like this really scared kind of attitude, just expecting the worst. And maybe that's one way to kind of protect yourself against being disappointed. But for me, like whenever I used it in the past, I always looked at it as something fun. This is like a chance to get to know potentially some really cool people. And also, by the way, like I think at least part of the problem, I'm not sure if you ladies will agree with me, but at least part of the problem is that, looking for men, you're going to come across a cross section of men who are entitled and who are being really aggressive at you. And, some people like, some women like women, right? So you can always open yourself up to getting messages from women too. And that's a totally different experience.
We should do an experiment with that and see what the variance is with how women talk to each other. I don't know. I feel like we could just do weird experiments with this all day and bring them back to the audience.
It's funny because sometimes it feels like, when you take two magnets and you're putting the magnets next to each other, and then the poles are kind of reversed, so the negative and the negative are facing each other, and you try to put the magnets together, but they keep repelling each other. Sometimes women and women is kind of like that, where it's like, it's just really hard for them to get together because socially we're conditioned for this really passive role in dating, right? Like all we have to do is literally just go outside like Julia did, unfortunately. And, men are going to aggressively come at us. And so we never really learn to be proactive when it comes to dating and to reach out to people. And so I don't know, for me, overcoming that kind of conditioning and being more proactive myself about relationships and really actively choosing my partners instead of just letting them choose me and then picking whichever one I kind of like is acceptable, being more proactive has really helped me in the dating.
So
landscape.
I think there's a huge caveat to that, Stephanie, because, the guys that came up to me were Middle Eastern. And it depends on your culture. So Russian men, Italian men, Middle Eastern men, many men from not necessarily the West are very aggressive still. Whereas I found, especially living in more liberal states and liberal cities, such as San Francisco, going out in New York City, nobody comes up to you ever. This is why people online date now. It's
totally. I know that from
men
first
do not hit on you.
Never. Only at the end of the night when they're completely plastered and it's a disgusting, offensive conversation. They're just like blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, but isn't online dating kind of an environment where you're allowing yourself to be virtually approached?
Yes. So it's kind of, what is it, the chicken or the egg? Have men become so pacified in the West that they need to be on online dating as their crutch, and then like their true selves come out? Or everyone's so used to social media and Tinder that no one knows how to talk to each other anymore? I mean, they go hand in hand, right? Like men are terrified. Like men do not go up
blame them
to anybody anymore.
It is scary. I mean, the amount of people that I swipe left on alone, I don't know. It's hard. For
swiping left is no, right? For those who
swipe left
familiar.
means no. Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty picky, so I can't imagine that it's fun for a guy to approach a girl. But I mean, man up, boys.
How Tinder works for people who might not be familiar?
Who doesn't know how Tinder works?
Well, there might be some people listening who don't. So it's an app where you get shown pictures of people and you either swipe the picture left if you say, no, I wouldn't ever consider dating or meeting this person, or right if you would say, yeah, I would be open to talking to this person more. And if both of you swipe right on each other to say yes to each other, then you're able to send each other a message through the app, and then you can chat about meeting up, or you can block each other if it's creepy or whatever. It's the next step.
Yeah, I mean, they usually have a little description about them as well. But I don't know. I feel like it's not that easy for the guys. And, something that I had mentioned or kind of mentioned in our little chat as an evolution to this, which I think might explain it, is pornography, right? I mean, I think everybody enjoys some pornography from, now and then, but it's gotten to be, an extension of the Tinder apocalypse, right? Like, where are they getting these vulgar ideas from? I mean, supposedly men have dirty minds. I don't think that women are far behind, but I think that porn has become just a desensitizer, right? And so even when men meet women in person, if you're not basically this over-the-top porn star, they have a hard time getting it together. And it's also become very socially acceptable. So I was at a conference in Las Vegas, and there was a crypto conference, and there was an adult video award conference, something like that. And the guys were just blatantly like, yeah, we're going to go hang out with the porn stars. And I started thinking to myself, why is this civilized conversation? Like, I don't really want to hang out with a porn star. I don't want to be asked why I don't want to hang out with a porn star. Like, this
isn't a professional chat, right?
Yeah, no, this is
like an industry chat.
Correct. This is in an industry chat at a crypto conference. And so, I just thought it was weird that all these dudes were talking about banging. Well, one of them was talking about hooking up with a porn star, which is just whatever. He's an idiot. But it was just completely socially acceptable. And I mean, look, if you're a sex worker, look, there's a reason why people like porn, right? I mean, people like porn for many thousands of years, but it's also become really weird. Like if you go to Pornhub or RedTube, it's like 50% of the videos are stepbrother, stepsister, stepmom. And I don't want to see that crap at all. Like they could just scan that. I don't care if you're step or not.
Because regular porn doesn't do it for anyone anymore.
So gross. I don't ever want to see that. And that's creepy to me. I don't know. I mean, maybe some people are into that. If you're into that, I don't know, whatever. No one acted out in real life. But yeah, I mean,
well, it's like this fantasy world, right?
Totally.
Like just like Tinder makes it easy to have a buffet of options in front of you, and there's always a new picture waiting when you swipe the picture that you're currently on. It creates almost this fantasy stock of like access to sex or experiences. And that doesn't really I'm not sure if our brains are kind of built for that,
Well, I mean, all the studies are showing it's awful for you, right? And I used to be, when I was a little younger, I was very libertarian, do what you want, all of the stuff. Porn doesn't translate to, it's like problems, or violence in media doesn't ever translate to, etc. Well, you know what? Actually, the porn thing does translate to real problems. We have conclusive proof of that, brain scans and just correlative studies. And to think, yes, of course, it's a fantasy, but those fantasies do affect people's lives. They break up. You know what? It's at a point now where it's not just breaking up relationships and marriages. It's at a point where people literally cannot have them.
Yeah, I mean, this is like not an anti-sex thing or an anti-masturbation thing, at least from my perspective. I'm positive on sex and masturbation. It's just that if you go on the internet, you can read lots of stories of people, usually men, who say that like watching a lot of porn shifts something in their brain so that they're no longer able to get turned on by actual real sexual experiences, because it raises the threshold for what they need to get excited, because there's access to so much overstimulation online and you can just do it constantly all day.
Mm-hmm. And you can put it like this. Let's say you're on Twitter all day long and you're scrolling, and all you're reading is sentences. Sit down, try to read a book for an hour. You are incapable of doing so because your brain is retrained for small bouts of information. Porn is absolutely no different, except it affects you in a much more dramatic way, because you can get away with reading less, but it's kind of hard to get away with not bonding with human beings anymore.
Yeah, but is it hard to get away with that because there's so much porn available, right? And so people kind of just get used to that as their new normal. And I don't know, there's some articles, I don't know how true this is because I'm, I guess, kind of out of touch with it, but there's some articles that are saying like there's trends among younger people where they're not really even seeking out relationships because it's easier to just stay home and watch porn.
Exactly. And in terms of your comment about being sex positive still, the way, I'm pretty confident in making this statement. Not everybody feels bad after an orgasm on their own, but absolutely everybody feels bad after an orgasm, after a binge session of porn. Every single person I've ever spoken to and everything that I've ever read, everyone feels guilty. And no one can quite explain where that guilt comes from. And it's not necessarily attached to the act of pleasuring oneself. It's attached to, in my opinion, well, I just saw probably a lot of violent or semi-violent, repetitive and also variant images of hypersexual activities that I will never experience and I might not actually want to experience. And my brain does not process that well and maybe isn't supposed to. And you get this onslaught of guilty feelings. And I don't know a single, like, please find me a person who feels amazing and inspired about life after they watch porn for half an hour.
Yeah, I don't really feel comfortable agreeing with that. I mean, maybe for most porn, but there is some types of porn out there that are not like your typical mainstream porn, right? Like they might show more realistic depictions of sex or kind of more.
Sure, I'm speaking generally. Most people aren't watching 10-minute clips of loving couples on cams, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
Well, I think all of this also brings out the idea that sex is sort of free, right? Bringing it back to the dating apps, you know, I don't know. I just feel like even if you want to take it slow as a single woman, it's very difficult because everybody's just putting out and it's almost like an expectation. And I mean, I've had different periods in my life where I took things faster maybe than I wanted to, or even that I knew that I wanted to. And now just basically with these kinds of apps, I mean, how do you even compete in that market? If a guy can get sex really easily, why would he put in the work? I mean, you would hope that you would be that special
Unless
flower.
unless
But
he wants a real relationship, which gives more than just sex.
are
Yeah,
people going back to that now, do you think?
I would love to interject with my experiences on that, because I found that a lot of, especially in the kind of mid to late 30s age range, in the age range I was dating in, I was waiting, not 2 months, but I wasn't giving sex right away. I wanted to get to know somebody. And at first it was, I could see it and hear it from these guys, and it was very, very frustrating for them. But after a date or two, it was almost like that old school chase. It became exciting to them. They enjoyed getting to know me. They enjoyed knowing that I wasn't going to, quote unquote, put out right away. It was like, oh, this girl actually knows what she wants. She's respecting herself. Maybe she is a very sexual person, which I am, but she's not looking to just sleep with any guy who buys her dinner. And yeah, sure, there are douchebags who, I would go out with and they would just wait until they could have sex with me. But that's been for a millennial, like guys, waiting and courting just for sex. That's not a new thing. But the bulk of the guys that I was dating, they respected it. And the ones that didn't disappeared. And I was fine with it. If that's all they wanted was sex, goodbye. That's totally fine. But I think that might be a harder mindset for younger women who are dating in a younger dating range. And maybe there are people around them that are just having sex really freely and not thinking twice about it. And I'm sure that that's a common thing that they're going through. But I know for me, when I really kind of stuck to my guns with it and really just stayed, it's so cliche, but it's just stayed true to what I wanted in the relationship. And when I was ready, the guys actually loved it. They enjoyed it. It brought back that courtship that a lot of guys, I think, are really missing. I think we think that most of these guys just want easy sex, and sure, a lot of them do, but there's a good chunk of guys who like courting, who like that whole old school guy chases the girl. I don't know. That's just in my experience. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, I really like what you said about sticking to your guns and staying true to yourself, because to me that sounds like boundaries. And
Oh,
you have to
sure.
get really good at boundaries when you're dating. You have to know what you want, what you accept and what you don't accept, where the line is. And inevitably, when someone tries to push your boundaries, you have to stick firm and enforce them. And in order to do that, in order to even know what your boundaries are, you have to get to know yourself. And so, we learn about ourselves through relationships, but we can also learn about ourselves on our own. And maybe it's important to just get connected with ourselves and do some self work before we really dive into a big stretch of dating.
Yeah, know your worth.
Exactly. And I see no issue if there are women that are just really, really free with having casual sex. Go for it. I'm not judging you if that's something that you truly know you want. But I think it really comes down to understanding expectations and understanding what you really want. And so there's a measure of really getting to know yourself also. So maybe that happens through dating. Maybe that happens through time. Maybe that's something at 14 years old. But I think that's also an interesting thing to bring up. The women that are out there looking for the same things that kind of promiscuous men are. Do they exist? What do you guys think?
So I wanted to jump in for that one because when I was younger, I had read a book called Fear of Flying. And in it, it's sort of this like feminist kind of book. And she talks about the zipless fuck. And she's looking for, that quick like sex for the point of just taking it and stuff. And I think that was maybe a little bit more relevant back in that time. But sometimes I wonder, and at the time I thought like, yeah, that's right. But now I don't know if that was maybe an insecurity, if that's a cultural push. Do you guys think that women can just randomly take their pleasure and not suffer some sort of psychological or whatever kind of, I don't know, like detriment to their soul? You know what I mean? Like, can you sleep around and still love yourself?
I don't think men or women can. I know that sounds very radical, but I think even if it feels like you can in the moment, and even if you may not specifically regret it later or feel ashamed, you will look back and you will say, it won't add much to your life. It'll be a fleeting experience. And I think there's a risk. Okay, that's not necessarily bad, okay, having a fleeting fun experience. But when that is a repetitive pattern of behavior for you, it's difficult to break that pattern. And then you end up alone and 40 and really wanting a relationship, but completely unable to know your worth because you keep doing the same thing over and over and not ending up in a relationship status that you may now want in your older age. And I would say the same for men. And I think men get more of a pass, and it's definitely has to do with society. And also for men, it's a little simpler because you don't have as big of a burden to bear if your birth control fails. Okay. But I think I will say confidently and strongly, both men and women will be affected by their rampant promiscuity at some point in their life. And it's hard to foresee.
For me, I don't really care about the answer for women in general or men in general. I only care about the answer for myself. And the answer for me is, yeah, no, that doesn't work for me. I don't really want just casual sex. And I figured that out through a process of trial and error. And that's all I'm going to say about it. But yeah, I mean, I've learned that I want more than that. I want a real relationship, someone who sees me for who I am, the whole person, not just the shell, what's on the outside, or not just for a short period of time.
Well,
that's
the
a good
sex is
segue.
better.
That's a good polyamory segue, I think.
Do you want to talk about polyamory?
Right, because I think polyamory has grown really popular because people don't want to be randomly promiscuous with random strangers and be in dangerous, weird situations. And they also acknowledge that everyone wants an emotional side to it, whether you're a male or a female. So now you get this other option where you literally have your cake and eat it too, with new drawbacks and new positives.
So what do you mean when you say polyamory? Because I think a lot of people have different definitions of that term.
Sure. Let's keep it simple. Polyamory is when you're having sex with multiple partners, but they're not one-night stands. They are basically they're each basically a relationship. Some have prioritize those relationships, some like have a hierarchy, some are totally equal if that's even possible. But basically having sex with multiple monogamous partners within the context. Does that make sense? So you're not going out and partying and sleeping with random people. You're having committed relationships with 2 to 3 to 4 partners.
Yeah, I would say relationships with more than more than 2 people involved in the relationship. And not everybody is always having sex. For example, I'm thinking of like polygamous Mormon families, right? Where there's like one husband and he's got 3 wives, and the wives are sister wives to each other. They're not having sex with each other. They're just friends, and they're supporting each other and their children and stuff like that. But they're each only having sex with the man, but the man's having sex with all of them.
That we know of. Maybe
that we know. Yeah, sometimes I'm sure that rule is broken.
Yeah, I mean, like female sex is kind of hard to define to begin with. So,
right. Yeah,
Well,
but there
I
could
don't
be
know.
types of polyamorous families that, it's, I would the point I'm trying to make is that polyamory isn't necessarily about sex. It's more
Yeah.
about love and relationships.
But I don't really think that polyamory is very realistic the way that it's practiced. So there's a big, population, I guess, in New Hampshire. Everybody is going on this polyamory trend. And I just don't know. I feel like 95% of polyamorous attempts fail, and they fail really, really badly. And I think that some of the people are not necessarily there for the genuine emotional connection. Maybe some of them are avoiding it, and this way they're diluting their relationship. But I'm pretty not really into polyamory. I think it just sounds awful. I read a really good book, and I think a few of you have read it. Maybe our audience would like to check it out, called Sex at Dawn. And there are certainly some cases to be made for it, but I think in practicality, it doesn't really work.
So Sex at Dawn is an interesting book because it makes a lot of conclusions to back up polyamory with evolutionary psychology and the human biology and like our natural urges, which I find really problematic because, I mean, the same people who don't like traditionalists doing this do the same thing except another direction. So one example from the book would be women are more vocal than men during sex to let other men know that they're enjoying sex to bring more partners to them. But like I could easily make the claim that no, women are more vocal during sex because they have internal orgasms and they signal to men when they orgasm to let them know that they are pulsating the seed into themselves and that they will most likely be fertilized. Like because when you orgasm, you're actually more likely to get pregnant because of the your muscle activity inside. So I mean, like which one's true? So I really have a problem when polyamorous start to tell me humans aren't monogamous. Being in a traditional relationship is against your natural tendencies. I'm like, not really. Depends where you live, depends who you are, depends what kind of brain structure you have.
Right. And even the argument of humans are naturally a certain way. Okay, well, maybe that's debatable, but it's confusing the is and the ought, right? Maybe humans are naturally non-monogamous or violent or something else, right? But what would we like to be, right? We, as humans, we have the capacity to choose how our life goes. And maybe we'd like to make a different choice, even if it's difficult at times because it goes a little bit against our natural tendencies.
Exactly. It's what differentiates us from beasts. Okay, we have a choice.
But I wouldn't compare polyamory or non-monogamy to beastliness.
No, I wouldn't.
The reason that this book, Sex at Dawn, is so popular is because, just like Tatiana, you pointed out that there are problems with polyamorous relationships that you see, and a lot of them fail, which absolutely is true. And sometimes they fail in a public and high drama kind of way. There are also lots of problems with monogamous relationships. There are high divorce rates. A lot of people cheat on their spouses. There's this concept of the 7-year itch where you're together for a long time and then you kind of start to get bored of your partner. And boredom is an issue and something that needs to be addressed in monogamous relationships. And in order for it to be addressed, it needs to be acknowledged, right? That this can sometimes be a problem. Okay, that doesn't mean necessarily the solution is to be polyamorous or non-monogamous, but it means that, okay, let's look in the mirror and see what are our strengths and weaknesses as human beings or maybe as individuals, and then figure out some strategy to deal with them. And it could just be something to increase the closeness or bonding or sexual excitement with your mate. That's not non-monogamy, but just some other kind of solution to spice things up if you're in a long-term relationship and you're getting kind of bored.
Yeah, I think that's very well put. And I have something to kind of build off of that. And so a while back, I did a video called How Promiscuity Hurts Men, how male promiscuity hurts men. And one of the things I said in the video was today, there's female promiscuity everywhere and men can have free sex basically easily and everywhere. And then I talked about what the detriment to men is from that. What a lot of people said is, well, you're wrong. Promiscuity always existed. And I'm like, yes, but I'm talking about public promiscuity. So before very recently in history, promiscuity was hidden and not talked about at all, but still done, maybe a little bit less to the degree of today, but it wasn't an accepted societal phenomenon. And because women hid this fact from men didn't believe that they could get a free access to sex. They didn't think everyone else was getting it. And people married and stayed in relationships, and you can criticize that, but that is what it was. Now, because it's so publicized and prominent, and it's in the movies, it's in the billboards, men are bombarded by images of variety and accessibility. And what they're getting signaled is, oh, why would I ever be in a relationship? Why would I ever commit to anyone? Why would I ever be married if I could just keep having sex with beautiful young women throughout my whole life with zero consequences? So speaking to what Stephanie was saying, my ideal world would be people are in publicly monogamous relationships and they try to achieve the happiness of being with one individual. But you know what? When you get that 7-year itch, I don't think it's detrimental to the marriage to, do something about that itch. But I don't think it should be done in a public way. I think it should be done in a way that actually creates more fun in the marriage. Because I think keeping things a little bit shaded and hidden is actually sexier and actually scratches that itch more instead of having this giant display of whatever you're doing.
Wait, so are you saying that you should cheat on your partner?
No, not cheat. No. But I mean, you within the marriage, you and that partner should decide what you want to do. And
like swingers or going to a strip club, or what are we talking here?
It depends. Sure, it depends on that relationship, right? But I guess what I'm criticizing is having like people walk around and say it's okay to, okay, let me put it this way. It's more sexy to do things in a surreptitious way, not necessarily without the consent of your partner, but as that unit, as that married unit, to do something that's sexy and no one else knows about it. I think it's a lot less sexy when everyone knows you're in like some weird open relationship and you talk to people constantly about it. Like, what's the fun in that? You're just becoming as lame as a 20-year married couple who never, who's just stagnant in their relationship. You can be stagnant in the polyamorous relationship as well, right? So I think that kind of sexiness of keeping your sex life a little bit private and hidden, I think we've lost that. And I think everything's too graphic and exposed, even in our private lives. Like even when we're on social media, everyone's oversharing. And I think when it comes to sex, when you overshare, it actually kills that kind of fun aspect of it.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I just read this thing about the 4 types of monogamy, right? So most people think of monogamy as just, okay, if you're in a monogamous relationship, like the way most people think of marriages, you're monogamous, right? But there's actually different elements to it. So this was a cartoonist named Kimchi Cuddles who drew this cartoon about it and then explained it. And she says there's sexual monogamy, right? Which means you don't have sex with anybody except this one person. And then there's social monogamy, which means you go to events and you go to weddings and funerals and birthday parties only with this one person. And then there's emotional monogamy, which means that you tell your hopes and dreams and you have deep conversations and you spend most of your time with this one person. And then there's structural monogamy, which means you live with just this one person. So, if we can differentiate these elements of monogamy, we can start to think about, okay, which ones are most important to me? Maybe I don't mind if my husband has a best friend who he has deep conversations with, as long as he shows up at the birthday party with me. Maybe I don't mind if my partner has a roommate, as long as they're only having sex with me. So I think that's great to think about this in a little more granular kind of way.
I actually know a couple. This is someone's parents. And the dad loves to travel. They're retired, okay? The mom loves to stay at home, work on her garden. And this was a huge rift in their marriage because they weren't doing things together anymore and they were doing things by themselves. So one day, they both found out that the father has actually been traveling with a female companion. And the mother, while he was traveling, was having an affair with a male companion. And they found out about this and they were totally okay. And they were like, actually, this is good and it's working for us. So they have this exception in their marriage where when he travels, he can have sex with this woman and enjoy traveling with her. And when she's at home alone, she can do the same with this one guy she's been doing it with. Because maybe you can't cheat on your chess partner with your tennis partner. And it's good that it came out into, it came into a dialogue for them and it wasn't a secret the whole time. But that's like definitely speaking to your point, Stephanie. And it's better than getting divorced, right?
I think the honesty is important, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with that. It's if you're discussing it and there's that openness and it's something you're both okay with, I don't see why that would be a problem at all if it works in the relationship.
But wait, I have a further question. What about people that feel like they're going to lose that person unless they go along with it? Because you can say that you're having an open, honest conversation, but you might not know how that feels for you once it actually happens. And then how do you walk it back if you're like, oh, wait, I don't actually like this? Because talking about it and doing it are oftentimes different things.
Sure.
Yeah, well, that starts to go into what is consent, right? And I want to send you another graphic that I just recently saw called the triangle of consent. And this means like there's different elements to consent. What this one vlogger lists is communication, power, and agency. And all of these things have to be present for someone to really give genuine consent and for it to really be a yes and to know that the yes is meant and the yes is valid. So for example, if someone is in a situation where they feel pressured to say yes to something because they'll lose their partner's approval or love if they say no, then that yes is not as genuine because the yes is coming under duress, essentially. Likewise, if someone doesn't have the agency to give consent, for example, if someone's drunk or if someone's a young person that doesn't have all the life experience that maybe they need to make that decision, that yes is not valid. And then finally, if someone doesn't have all the information, if it's not communicated to them, if you say, hey, would you like a cup of tea? And the person says, yes, I would like a cup of tea. And then you serve them coffee instead. Okay, that's not, that wasn't the agreement, right? So the agreement needs to be clearly communicated and all the information, all the questions need to be answered in order to really understand something. And then the person can give consent. So
I like when I ask for tea and I get a cookie as well.
Right. Well, that wouldn't be a problem for you, but what if you have gluten
Diabetes.
intolerance or something, or diabetes, right? So,
Fine.
well, I mean, Tatiana, though, to your point, I have seen that happen a lot where one partner is getting kind of bored in a monogamous relationship and they decide unilaterally that the solution is to open up the relationship and go have sex with other people. And perhaps their partner is really not on board with that, but the partner thinks, oh, I have to say yes to this or else I'm going to lose what I have. And so I really don't want this, but I kind of have to take whatever I can get. And so then they, reluctantly agree to it. And their partner's not even really hearing their hesitation because the partner who wants to open up the relationship really isn't even open to hearing no. And so when you're asking someone for their consent or for their agreement to something, you have to really be open. It's your responsibility. You have to be open to hearing no, and you have to hear no gracefully.
I find that this is also a huge problem in the polyamory community. I find that the men often don't get they don't get an even playing field because it's easier for women to find a new sexual partner, which translates often to an emotional partner. Whereas a lot of men I've met in polyamorous relationships are a little bit more laid back and shy and introverted, and they get this wonderful woman in their life, and then someone brings up the concept of being with other people as well. and they are worried about saying no. And the reason I conclude this is because the women have maybe 3 other men, and then the man just doesn't have anyone, or maybe has some girl once in a while. And perhaps that's enough for them. Maybe I'm misinterpreting that, but I've seen it in many, many polyamorous relationships. And I wonder if the man really is getting what he thought he was opting in for.
Well, I've seen this flip too, or I've heard of it flipping too, right? Where you have a heterosexual couple in an open relationship, and in their younger years, it's more difficult for the man to find a partner than it is for the woman. But then as they age, the situation reverses because sometimes men become more attractive as they age. And so then it's suddenly easier for him to get partners, and then she feels left out. But of course, this is all heterosexual too in this example. So it could be that 2 people are in a relationship. One is heterosexual or gay, and the other one is bisexual. And, they're just looking for a partner who is a different gender than their current partner. And so how can it be equal there, right? Because, is there a double standard, right? Is the bisexual person allowed to seek a second partner and the monosexual person isn't? That's something that everybody has to work out for themselves.
Yeah, I think polyamory actually works the best in those situations because, again, it seems more fair. It's like what I said, you can't cheat on your tennis partner with your chess partner. If you're bisexual and your heterosexual partner can't provide for your needs because they don't have the same parts that you seek, right? Then I think that becomes more of a clear-cut relationship. And I know quite a few marriages where the man is okay with the woman sleeping with other women because, he doesn't have a vagina or breasts. And women are a little bit different in their approaches to the relationships. So I actually think that's the most ideal dynamic in polyamory.
There can be some, oh shit, I lost what I was going to say. Sorry about that. Give me a second.
It can be some men with vaginas.
That wasn't what I was going to say, but yes. Well, some bisexual people are fine being monogamous. And, in order to incorporate elements of variety that they're attracted to, they'll seek out partners who have some kind of unusual aspect. So, for example, I am a bisexual woman and, maybe my partner is a man who has kind of some feminine parts or feminine qualities about him. Or, it's a woman who's like got some masculine aspects, or it's a transgender person, or I don't know, just a person who has multitudes within them, right? As Walt Whitman said. And it's always possible to find someone like that, because when you're with multiple people, sometimes that there can be this compartmentalization that goes on, right? Just like the Mormon polygamists, you have the man rotating every night to sleep with a different wife. And then on those nights when he's not with her, she's just alone. There can be this sort of compartmentalization aspect. Who do I go home with for the holidays? Do I spend Christmas with this partner or that partner? Or do we all get together? Do my partners all get along with each other, right? That's another important aspect in polyamory. So even for people who are bisexual, you can find some of them are completely happy with a monogamous partner, or even pansexual, right? Pansexual is like attracted to any gender, or the
ocean.
Not really a factor. Yeah, the ocean of genders, right? What do those people do, right? And even for people who consider themselves straight or gay, completely 100%, they're only attracted to certain types of bodies or certain genders. They could just feel that their partner is not meeting a certain need for them. Maybe their partner doesn't like to dance, or their partner doesn't like to play tennis, like you said, Julia. And are they going to seek out someone else? Are they going to try to get their need met with a friend in a different way? How are they going to handle that? That's something that everybody has to decide for themselves. We're just kind of talking about different examples of how you could potentially handle those problems, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I will say, no matter what kind of relationship you're in, and some make more sense with the point I'm about to make than others, but I think to get the most out of a relationship, there has to be sacrifice, because you need this balancing effect in all of your endeavors. If you don't sacrifice, your time, your career will probably not fulfill you. If you don't sacrifice something in your life for to be in a relationship that you cherish, then that relationship probably isn't amazing, because there's always a flip side to everything. There's always a yin and yang. There's always a balancing. You can't just have something amazing for nothing. There's always a sacrifice. To have a beautiful child, you have to go through the labor of producing that child. To have an amazing career, you have to sacrifice a lot of your personal life and time. To have an amazing partner and love life, there has to be some kind of sacrifice. And for generations, that sacrifice was being monogamous. And now it might be a little bit more nuanced than that. But really ask yourself, what are you doing to work at this relationship? And what have you sacrificed? And what is the strain that you've put into it? Because things that are worth it are never easy. And if it's easy, you are going to get bored, and you haven't done anything to make the relationship fruitful if it's easy.
Yeah, where's the proof of love, everybody?
Oh, what a great way to bring it back to full circle. Well, should we wrap up? Because we've been going for a while here.
Yeah, this is one of our longer episodes. This has been really awesome. Julia, we'll have to have you back on. There's tons and tons of stuff that we could talk about. I'd like to everybody check out some of Julia's videos. Julia, what's your YouTube channel?
It's Brave the World.
Yeah, Brave the World. There's a lot of really interesting videos. You might not agree with everything, but it's all really good stuff and interesting to watch for sure if you're interested in this kind of stuff. Stephanie, you can find her at her website. She's doing all sorts of stuff. Lauren, are you going to start writing more blogs? Oh, yes. And on Proof of Love. Lauren, are you going to write some more blogs?
I think I am. Yeah, I've been thinking about it, and I think it's the right time. But yeah.
Well, people can go to proofoflovecast.com. Thank you to our sponsors. We look forward to hearing from you guys again. Check it out on Twitter. We're on Facebook, Instagram. Send us your show ideas if you want to be on Proof of Love, if you've got something cool, or if you want to sponsor the show, let us know. We've got a contact form. So thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.
Show me your heart. I know that it's beating. Tell me that you love me too. So I know your heart is true. 'Cause I need some proof of love. 'Cause I need some proof of love. 'Cause I need some proof of love. Thank you for listening to Proof of Love. Please follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Proof of Lovecast. More episodes can be found at proofoflovecast.com. And make sure you leave a review on iTunes and tell your friends. A special thanks to our sponsor, MetalPay, where you can earn crypto while sending your money for free anywhere.